Final Fantasy IX is one of the best games I've ever played in my life, but with age and an infinitely swelling backlog, I don't get tons of opportunities to revisit my favorite games from the past. To circumvent this, I sometimes create challenges for my all-time favorites to justify another playthrough, and today I've done that with FF9. You're watching Rayl Deal Games, and in this video, I'll be sharing my rogue-like FF9 challenge. This means that this is a permadeath challenge with modular conditions. I make new videos every Friday on various video game related topics, and if you like this video, you may like my future ones. Stay tuned to the end of this video for an opportunity to earn a copy of FF9 Remake, should that game ever actually come out. With all of that established, let's dive right in. Since this is my challenge, I've made the rules myself. Now, I like my personal challenges to be tense, challenging, and fun. The fun factor of a challenge matters a lot to me, as there are loads of Final Fantasy challenges out there, but many of them are trial and error slogfests, and I don't find that sort of challenge particularly fun. Since I've beaten every game I design challenges for, permadeath is a common feature of my challenges, and that is true here. Permadeath on its own doesn't make a game a roguelike though, as there needs to be a modular nature to the game, either through procedural generation or buffs and debuffs. These things are what make roguelikes replayable even when they are difficult, and I replicated this aspect of the genre in my FF9 challenge by creating an ability banning system. For each character in the game, I put all of their available abilities on a randomizer wheel and banned 10. This means that not only will the character not be able to use the ability in question, but they will also not be able to equip items with banned abilities on them, which severely impacts the strengths and weaknesses of each character. Additionally, I added to the wheel player debuffs too, where certain features in FF9 can be banned for the player. The list of player actions that can be banned are as follows. Some of these, like not being able to use items or magic outside of combat, are serious debuffs, and once any of these have been hit on the wheel, it is removed from future rolls. The only exception is item, which is a character-specific debuff. Variety matters a lot in roguelikes, and we're just getting started. To prevent myself from using the same team composition for the endgame, I made a final dungeon required team comp, which is randomized as well. Additionally, for discs 1 through 3, there is a required party member that must be in the party at all available times. This character is randomly selected from the 3 final dungeon party comp characters. Finally, the only booster the player is allowed to use from the remastered version of FF9 is the speed up feature, which is great for getting through dialogue on reruns, although there is a risk to using this. It is extremely easy to accidentally get yourself killed using this feature, and any game over, regardless of whether this is used or not, is permadeath. The run starts in the Forbidden Forest after Garnet has been taken, and there are a few rules for setting up the run as well. The jump rope minigame can't be done, and you should have stolen everything you possibly can from Baku during Zidana's first encounter. Also, looking up guides is banned, as that would make the challenge way too easy. This challenge is entirely of my own design, so before doing the challenge proper, I did a few test runs to see the viability of the challenge itself and how fun it actually is. You remember how I said the speed up booster is risky? Yeah, I meant it, as when I did my first setup for this challenge, I actually got a game over on Baku of all things, because I dropped my controller and he hit me twice while I was picking it up. If this weren't a test run and later in the game, this would have still counted as a run ender, so use this booster at your own risk. After getting the challenge set up, I did 2 more test runs using the same debuffs that I'll be using for my first proper run to test the waters of the early game. This is the list of banned abilities my test runs and first proper attempt will be impacted by. When I play JRPGs, I don't grind. I just beeline the main progression the whole time because I enjoy the challenge of being a little underleveled for each dungeon boss and major plot moment. However, this propensity of mine punished me immediately on my first test. Not being able to buy items or use items to heal outside of combat was a serious problem because I entered the first boss fight underleveled and underhealed. This mess of plant matter actually killed me, and this is when I realized I was going to have to play FF9 in a way completely different from what what I'm used to because I've never died to this guy, not even when I was 6 playing this game. Now I know there's also a way to heal right outside of this boss room, but since ends are banned for me, I initially made it so that these types of mechanics can't be used. However, I rescinded this idea after this early test here. I think as long as you are not paying for the full heal, then it is not considered an end. After resetting the run for my next test, I did some grinding to be able to beat him, and I realized how important random encounters would be for item acquisitions. Since I'm not able to buy items from shops, monsters are my only option for acquiring potions, phoenix downs, and all the rest. Because I'm not allowed to look up guides for this challenge, I'll have to keep track on a pad of paper to know which monsters drop which items so that I know where to go whenever I'm running low, especially on things like ethers. For my first time in a Final Fantasy game, I began grinding for items instead of XP, but as I entered the Ice Cavern, I got myself into a little bit of a pickle. By the end of this small dungeon, I was out of Phoenix Downs and Zidane was dead. This is a major problem because Zidane is the only character I get to use on the next boss. I also couldn't seem to find the monster that dropped Phoenix Downs on this specific test, so I did a Hail Mary and banked on my ability to get a turn in with Zidane before the Sea Lion boss. Zidane will be healed to 1 HP by the game itself for this fight, and with the 150 from the potion, I'll be able to defeat the boss and heal up Zidane with Garnet outside of Dolly. But Sea Lion said, "No, I don't think I'll give you a turn," and killed me in the first turn, ending the second test. My lord, my friend. I think I found a new tier of torment for myself this time around. With these test runs out of the way, I decided to make the runs from here on out official. Resetting at the Forbidden Forest, I began my first proper playthrough. It's not often when we finish a game we ever get to recapture our wonderment and struggle through that game. I loved playing FF9 all the time when I was a kid, but on replays the early sections of the game could never rival the way they were when I was 6 playing it for the first time. 6-year-old me struggled with FF9 because I just couldn't think my way through the gameplay and boss fights, and for the first time in over 20 years, I've been able to recapture this tense sense of challenge in the first disc of this game. I did learn from my test run, so it's not like this was the hardest thing ever or anything, but whenever I got low on health, I felt that good stress you get from feeling the pressure in a game. I began to play much more cautiously this time around, making sure I had a nice stockpile of potions and Phoenix Downs before entering the Ice Cavern. Doing this, I was able to get to Dolly without any issues, and I managed to nab a few good items off of Black Waltz and Sea Lion. It didn't take long before Garnet being banned from using items in combat became a serious problem, as I didn't have enough ethers to support both her and Vivi. At this point, there didn't seem to be a monster that would consistently drop ethers as well, making Garnet mostly useless at this point in the game. That doesn't really matter though, because Dolly is incredibly easy, and I was able to dunk on both Black Waltz number 2 and 3 quite effortlessly because Zidane, Steiner, and Vivi have access to all of the abilities they get in the early game, and I wasn't entirely screwed on the available equipment I'd be allowed to outfit them all with. After getting through the story bits of Lindblom, I began to prepare for what I figured is the first real skill check of this particular challenge, Grimmaluke's Grotto. Grimmaluke's Grotto is actually the place I would get stuck at all the time when I was 6, but obviously this is not a super challenging section of the game. However, it is a bit harder without being able to buy items, synthesize weapons, use ends or items outside of combat, and with the debuff that prevents Quina from using items in combat. To make things worse, Freya couldn't even equip armor because cover is banned for her, giving her some awful defensive stats. It's been a decade since my last playthrough of FF9, so I couldn't remember what level is a comfortable one to fight Grimmaluke at, so I guessed it was somewhere around 10 for the party. Getting my party to this level, I quickly learned this is too low with the debuffs I'm working with. Grimmaluke's fight started out easy enough, but in a crucial turn where I needed Quina to use an item, the fight turned against me quickly. Not being able to use items with them at all meant my only option was to attack, essentially time walking myself. I tried to fight back from this, but as soon as a character dies, there's this awkward process of trying to revive them with a Phoenix Down. Usually they get up and are instantly dunked on again because enemies seem to favor targeting characters with critical health. Soon enough, I was down to 2 characters and then 3, and eventually I decided it was time to go for broke and try to weasel my way out of this difficult situation by just killing Grimmaluke himself. The problem with this is that Grimmaluke gets faster as he gets closer to death, giving giving him an average of 2 turns for each of your turn cycles. With Freya at 4 health, I decided to try a last-ditch jump, and it just wasn't enough. As soon as Freya landed, Grimalook killed her, ending my first official run. This is kind of ironic because Grimalook is the guy who would give me game overs left and right when I was 6, and I remember giving up on him once and playing something else, probably Spyro Year of the Dragon. I got into this cycle back then of just playing FF9 until Grimalook and then restarting, and I distinctly remember the moment when I managed to finally beat him. And since I'm such a sucker for nostalgia, I decided to relive this part of my gaming history. I began my second run by being even more careful than last time. These are the debuffs I ruled for this run. I managed to get to and through Grimalook's grotto pretty easily this time around, as I discovered a great place to get ethers and high potions right outside of Lindblum. I went in at level 15 this time around, and that felt like just the right level considering the debuffs I had. Quina couldn't use items again, however Freya did have armor on this time around. I beat him pretty handily, but there was a few moments where I nearly wiped much later into this game. Nearly right after Grimalook, the Antlion boss came close to ending my run because he sandstormed while all of my moves were already chosen. This is a feature of FF9 that is unique from essentially every other FF game. Simply put, FF9 is a slow game, so when you command your characters to do something, it won't happen right away. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 turns down the action lineup. Not that you exactly know that. Loading up turns like this is a seriously dangerous thing for a player to do since it takes away their ability to respond. Usually I don't load up my actions like that, keeping back 1 or 2 characters to heal as needed. However, I've literally never, even when I was 6, had problems with Antlion. So in my efforts to quickly make it past this fight, I nearly costed myself the whole run. Sandstorm reduces the party's life to a critical state, and while this on its own isn't a problem, Antlion does have a full party counterattack, and when these two things combine, it is an instant game over, unless Antlion misses. You remember that command locking I just talked about? Well, I was locked into my moves, and some of them were basic attacks which can trigger Antlion's counterattack. This is a major problem because right after 3 of my moves finished, Antlion used Sandstorm. It doesn't matter that I have turns with those 3 characters now, because Quina has to take their turn first, and their turn is a basic attack. Quina's basic attacks also have this odd effect where they can do exceptional or awful negligible damage. Sometimes Quina seems like they attack with a fork made from feathers rather than one made from steel. But luckily for me, I got a good attack this time around and it was enough to finish Antlion off. I actually let out an audible sigh of relief, and this won't be the last time this happens in this playthrough. The next time it happened was because of a misclick on my part. This game doesn't auto-set Phoenix down to dead characters, meaning that I almost wiped during the 3rd Beatrix fight because I whiffed 2 separate turns to miss-targeted Phoenix downs. I nearly didn't survive long enough to make it to her Clem Hazard finisher, but luckily I got there. This type of thing is the reason the reorganizing game menus is a debuff in my challenge run, because anything that causes the player to make a mistake can end a run. Mustard Bomb is a skill unique to FF9, and I'm sure the developers threw it in because of the way combat flows in this game. Mustard Bomb puts a status ailment on a character, making it so that if they try to do an action while under the effect, they die immediately instead. Mustard Bomb doesn't last super long, however it is great at punishing overzealous players, like me, who get their party locked into commands too early. This only impacted me twice in my playthrough, but thankfully neither got me close to a wipe. Malyrus in the final dungeon and the Veppels in Estogaza are the ones that used it. With Malyrus, I rebounded pretty quick, but with Estogaza, Veppel used Mustard Bomb on Amarant right after I used an elixir to fully heal him, and since I had a command locked in for him already, they killed him again right away. Mustard Bomb is scary and could definitely end future runs in this challenge, especially since I don't have every enemy who uses it memorized, nor did I know which ones used it when I went into this run. After lining Kuja in chalk, his buddy Necron jumps the party and he nearly ended my run. Necron is the final boss too, so that would have been terrible if that's what would have happened. Grand Cross is a fairly dangerous attack because of the way it inflicts multiple status ailments, including potentially death and zombie at the same time. Once he used it to kill Aiko with Death and freeze Garnet, I thought it was going to be over for me. Killing Garnet shortly afterwards and taking Zidane to 1, I used Zidane to Phoenix down Aiko, who thankfully wasn't hit with Zombie 2. Coming in clutch with a Phoenix summon, Aiko saved the rest of my team and my run. Putting Necron down a few turns later, my permadeath challenge run was finally at an end, and I stood still standing, victorious at last. There are so many Final Fantasy challenges out there, but I find most of them not fun at all. With this challenge, I tried to design something at the right level of difficulty, not too hard, nor too easy, and fun. This isn't the perfect roguelike either, since it's finicky to set up, meaning that one more go feeling is difficult to duplicate. I ended up rolling 6 runs worth of debuffs, and that's what I recommend you all do if you choose to undertake this challenge, because it would have been seriously annoying to wipe and then have to roll debuffs for 20 minutes before I could start my next run. I do think this challenge, or variations on it, are something I'll be doing for all of my future playthroughs of FF9 though. The major standout was the forced party comp for the late game, as it made me come up with team combos I'd never thought of before. I used Freya's white draw ability a lot in this playthrough as a way of saving my limited ethers, and honestly, Freya isn't a character that usually makes my final dungeon cut. My typical final party is Zidane, Vivi, Steiner, and Garnet, since I can usually beat this game 10 levels or so below the recommended minimum with this setup. There were also other combos I learned through my playthrough as well, such as the way Amara and Freya can essentially function as healers in a party comp without Aiko or Garnet. Also, playing the game with certain characters being banned from using items created some tricky combat situations to get out of, and it reminded me a lot of when you get a serious debuff in something like The Binding of Isaac. Trance also started to function as a major debuff for certain characters like Garnet and Aiko. Since I couldn't use trance abilities, entering trance meant Aiko could no longer use white magic for a few turns, and Garnet couldn't summon Eidolons. Because of my team comp, Garnet was actually one of my biggest damage dealers for a while, before I finally got holy for Aiko at least. Atomos, a usually useless summon, was actually pretty damn great for grinding green dragons early, meaning my run would have been so crazy different if Atomos was banned instead of Bahamut for her. The thing I love most about this challenge is that it made me learn more about corner case scenarios in FF9, and I love this title even more now. I definitely recommend you all try this challenge out for size, and because it's a bit finicky and time consuming, I'll be putting a bounty on it for the next little while. A remake for FF9 has been heavily rumored for a good long while now, and with Rebirth finally being out, I speculate that the next Final Fantasy game to come out of Square Enix will finally be it. Starting today, I'm putting out a bounty on my challenge, and for the first person to complete it before the release date, whenever that should be, of FF9's remake, I'll get that person a copy of that remake on the platform of their choosing. To prove that you've completed the challenge honorably, you'll need to stream your playthrough to YouTube or Twitch, which will just keep everyone honest on if or when a certain run has ended unsuccessfully. Each playthrough recording must start with you rolling your debuffs for the run. Feel free to post the links to those streams below as you make progress through the game, and I'll drop in and watch if I'm available. Once you've succeeded, share the playlist of the entire run with me, and as soon as I've watched it, I'll declare the winner. This will be a first come, first serve sort of thing, so the person who sends me a completed run first alongside their list of debuffs for each character will be the winner. A run will be disqualified if a banned ability or guides are used, or if an equipment piece with a banned ability on it is equipped, but everything else is fine. And above all else, have fun with this challenge, my friends. I had a blast coming up with it and completing it myself. And if you all like this video and want me to do more unique challenges for other Final Fantasy games, let me know. I've got one I'm working on for the original Final Fantasy VII, and I think it's going to be even more fun than this FF9 one. And that's the video, my guys. What do you think of my FF9 challenge? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and while you're there, consider smashing that like button, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell. My big goal for the year is 1,000 subscribers, and we're not really that far away at the time of writing. If you have a moment right now, you may even like one of my other videos on the screen. Regardless of what you choose to do, thank you for keeping it real with Rayl Deal Games, and have an awesome day, gamers.